Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Congressman Andy Biggs talks to us about Congress's efforts to pass Trump's agenda. But is it possible to maybe cut a little bit more spending? We'll talk to the congressman about that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. That's where we find Frank in Annandale, Virginia, line 6. Hello, Frank. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Hey, I just wanted to comment on that last segment where you were talking about Chris Rufo's report of all of these LGBTQ chat rooms up at the National Security Agency.
Yeah, that's right. They have chat rooms where they're discussing all these really obscene things about what they're doing to their bodies, and then there was a whistleblower who described that kind of the cult around this issue has only grown through the years because everybody is forced into routine trainings where they learn things like you're not allowed to use a name that somebody was born with. That's called dead naming. And it's so corrupted the work product because their job is gathering intelligence that they couldn't even write the names of adversaries down because they were so scared that they would, quote, dead name them. That's insane, Frank.
Yeah, it is. And so I can confirm that it's not just the National Security Agency, but many other networks that are part of this intelligence community have the same thing going on. And it's unbelievable. But you kind of saw this come up back in, I say, 2010, when they started having folding tables set up in the lobby with Pride Day, pushing forth all of this diversity, pride stuff. And it's infested the intelligence community to a point where they have these chat rooms where they're password protected. You don't know what people are doing in there, what they're talking about. And I'm so glad that people are talking about this now, and they're going to shut it down. And I'm so glad that Cash and Tulsi are in charge.
Yes.
Because I tell you what, 5 or 6 years ago, if somebody would have mentioned this, who knows if they would have gotten a no-knock raid and accidentally shot like that poor guy in Arkansas, the airport manager, because of the threat of retribution for disclosing something like this. So I think it's a good day.
So this is all over the place. This is at the intel agencies. They've got private chat rooms that are for. They often call these, like, I think the left uses phrases like affinity groups, or they all have the same characteristic. And there are secret conversations going on to continue to stoke. In this case, this is a mental health crisis, and they're literally trying to accelerate the mental health crisis in a chat room inside of a government agency. So not only is it making things worse for the people who are involved, but also they're wasting a tremendous amount of taxpayer resources and time, and that's happening inside of the intel agencies.
For sure, because they have administrators for these chat rooms. They devote servers to host these things.
Administrators. These are government employees? Like we have admins who are dedicated to running the chat room?
Yeah, just like you would on the public internet, you have an administrator and a moderator who can, I guess, kick people out if they're saying, the wrong things in the chat room. But it's, I'll confirm that's true. That's been happening, and I'm glad it's finally coming to an end because it's not mission essential whatsoever.
And it's not just in the government either. There are various chat platforms that companies use, and a lot of companies have been infected by this same thing too. Which it's just kind of like this neo-Marxist stuff going on inside of these chat rooms, and it's leading to revolts. So you have news outlets. The New York Times has this, where you have reporters who are on these secret chats talking to one another about their crazy left-wing obsession. And of course, they're wasting all the money of the New York Times. But they're causing these uprisings inside of these institutions, which seems to be the point, Frank.
Yeah, I think the pendulum has swung way too far. Everybody wants freedom and freedom of religion and to have sexual orientation and whatever you want to do. But the era of live and let live has ended, and like I said, the pendulum has swung way too far. It's completely out of hand.
Yes.
And I'm glad that this is coming to light.
Yeah, if we're going to cut something, we should cut taxpayer-subsidized mental illness and narcissism. I think that's a good place to start. All right.
1,000%.
Yeah, Frank, thank you for that report from the inside. I appreciate that. That's Frank in Annandale. A lot of these intel agencies have the same problem that Chris Rufo tells us that the NSA is afflicted by. On that topic, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was on Fox News last night with Jesse Waters and had this to say.
Well, Jesse, what we're going to do has already been done. There are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in this, what is really just an egregious violation of trust, what to speak of like basic rules and standards around professionalism. I put out a directive today that they all will be terminated and their security clearances will be revoked. But the thing here, Jesse, is like we got to take a step back because this is just barely scratching the surface. When you see what these people were saying, and thanks to Chris Rufo for putting it all out online, they were brazen in using an NSA platform intended for professional use to conduct this kind of
The NSA of all places. What does the NSA do? What is their job? Don't they monitor communications? And you're working there, and you're populating your little chat room with quote obscene, pornographic, and sexually explicit material. You're like, no one's ever going to see this.
Really horrific behavior, and they were brazen in doing this because when was the last time anyone was really held accountable? Certainly not over the last 4 years. Certainly not over the last 10, maybe 20 years. When we look at some of the biggest violations of the American people's trust in the intelligence community. So today's action in holding these individuals accountable is just the beginning of what we're seeing across the Trump administration, which is carrying out the mandate the American people gave him. Clean house, root out that rot and corruption and weaponization and politicization so we can start to rebuild that trust in these institutions that are charged with an important mission of serving the American people, ensuring our safety, security, and freedom.
Yeah, big time. Big time. It's just, and they're wasting your money to get their chuckles, like at work. Are they working? No, they're too busy talking about their demented sex lives at work. They don't have time for work because that's what they're up to. So you have Tulsi Gabbard canning them. Joe Biden would never. Phil is calling in from Fredericksburg. He's on line one. Phil, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, I'm so happy to hear that Kash Patel got picked as FBI director, and I'm really super happy to hear that Dan Bongino is going to be backing up Kash Patel. But Dan Bongino's got this number one rule, and it's called don't get dead. That's Dan Bongino's number one rule. And the thing is, the FBI is a profoundly corrupt agency, and there might be 4 or 5 FBI agents there who are on the take who wouldn't have a problem with an accidental discharge putting a bullet in Mr. Patel or Mr. Bongino. So I'm just asking them to be real careful who they surround themselves with at the FBI and to go in and use Doge to find out who's been getting all that money, who's been going into, Donald Trump's wife's sock drawer, and surround themselves with FBI agents they can trust.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I want to hear is Kash Patel or Dan Bongino catching a friendly fire accident in parentheses that takes them out of here. We need everybody to stay alive.
Well, amen to that. And God, I pray that it's not that bad. But boy, we have seen so much corruption in that agency. And here's the thing, Phil, you've got a situation where people like you and me, we just don't trust this institution, which is why you become really concerned about the safety of the people who are trying to fix it. Really concerned. And so Kash Patel, head of the FBI, also at the moment the acting director of the ATF. Dan Bongino on the way. He's, of course, still with us here on WMAL for a time, and then he's in as deputy director of the FBI. These men have a monumental task in front of them to restore faith in that agency because Phil doesn't trust it. And for good reason. I've been meaning, I want to get to the gold cards today. You've got President Trump leading these cabinet meetings today, led a cabinet meeting today, where he talked about the gold card and how he's going to bring in some money. He and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, were talking about this today. Essentially, there are millions upon millions of people all around the planet who want to come into the United States. They'd like to be here, and some of them have a lot of money. And the idea here is to retrofit an existing immigration system. It's already the case that if you've got a lot of money, there's a way for you to jump to the front of the line in the United States. But the Trump administration wants to up the ante, and they want to make it so that you pay a sizable sum to start on that pathway to citizenship, and you pay down our national debt. Take a listen to this concept.
This is commerce. So the EB-5 program, which has been around for many years, had investment of $1 million into projects in America. And those projects were often suspect. They didn't really work out. There wasn't any oversight of it. And so for $1 million investment, you got a visa, and then you came into the country and ended up with a green card. So it was poorly overseen, poorly executed. Then you had our border open where millions of people came through. So the idea is we will have a proper business. We will modify the EB-5 agreement. Christy and I are working on it together. For $5 million, they'll get a license from the Department of Commerce. Then they'll make a proper investment on the EB-5. Right? And we think Scott and I will design the EB-5 investment model because Scott and I are the best people together to do that. So this is joint. This is exactly the Trump administration. We all work together.
Okay, so this is all really important details. Just what Howard Lutnick's saying is we had an EB-5 program. We do. And right now you basically invest $1 million in the United States, put it to work here, and then you can get to the green card. And what that means is you're on a pathway to citizenship. Whenever you hear a green card, that means you're on the pathway to citizenship. But he says the problem is so horribly run that nobody was actually monitoring whether it was existing to the benefit of the country. So here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to change it. We're going to change the price from $1 million to instead $5 million. You give us $5 million, and we are going to impose the same restriction on you. You've got to deliver investment to the United States. You have to create something of value. We're not importing consumers. We're bringing in producers, so that this works to the benefit of the United States. So you give us $5 million, that pays the bills, and you produce here in the United States, creating American jobs, American wealth, American investment.
We work it out to be the best, and if we sell, just remember, 200,000. There's a line for EB-5 of 250,000 right now. 200,000 of these gold green cards is $1 trillion. To pay down our debt.
All right, so that's the real numbers. That he's got a list of 250 that are in the EB-5 line right now to get in, saying you get $5 million from each of these people. These are wealthy people. You get $5 million from each of them. That's $1 trillion.
And that's why the president is doing it, because we are going to balance this budget and we are going to pay off the debt under President Trump.
And to qualify, do you have to promise and make commitments to create a certain number of jobs here in the U.S.?
No, because not all these people are going to be job builders. There'll be successful people, or there'll be people that were hired from colleges, like sort of like paying an athlete a bonus. I mean, Apple or one of the companies will go out and they'll spend they'll buy 5 of them, and they're going to get 5 people. Look, I've had the complaint where,
in other words, this could be added as a perk for these companies. Wealthy companies in the United States could give $5 million extra to the American taxpayer in exchange for getting a couple of these golden cards to bring in coveted employees.
I've had the complaint from a lot of companies where they go out to hire people and they can't hire them out of colleges. And you know what they do? They go back to India, or they go back to the country where they came, and they open up a company, and they become billionaires. And they're employing thousands and thousands. There are a lot of examples. There are some really big examples where they were forced out of the country. They graduated top in their class at a great school, and they weren't able to stay. This is all the time you hear it. And the biggest complaint I get from companies, other than over-regulation, which we took care of, but we're going to have to take care of it here because a lot of that was put back on by Biden. But the biggest complaint is the fact that they can't have any longevity with people. This way they have pretty much unlimited longevity. Also, with the $5 million, that's a path to citizenship. So that's going to be, it's sort of a green card plus, and it's a path to citizenship. We're going to call it the gold card, and I think it's going to be very treasured. I think it's going to do very well.
I think they should up the price. $5 million, that's fine. Do more, 10, 15, 20.
We're going to start selling, hopefully, in about 2 weeks. Now, just so you understand, if we sell 1 million...
Can we trade Democrats? What if we swapped? So $5 million, you can come here, but Ilhan Omar's got to go.
Right? $1 million, that's $5 trillion. $5 trillion. Howard was using a different number, but that's $5 trillion. If we sell 10 million, which is possible, 10 million.
By the way, we bring in 1 million legal immigrants every year right now under our current immigration system. 1 million legal immigrants. President Trump's thinking about, maybe, what if we converted that to a lot of money?
Highly productive people coming in, or people that we're going to make productive. They'll be young, but they're talented, like a talented athlete. That's $50 trillion. That means our debt is totally paid off, and we have
these numbers are getting bigger and bigger.
$15 trillion above that. And now I don't know that we're going to sell that many. Maybe we won't sell many at all, but I think we're going to sell a lot, because I think there really is a thirst. No other country can do this, because people don't want to go to other countries. They want to come here.
Delivered like only President Trump can deliver it. All right, it's 5:23 now. And just to be clear, because you're probably wondering, yes, vetting is involved, the Trump administration declares. WMAL traffic and weather. We've got Michelle Murray in the hot. Big moves overnight as the United States House of Representatives is able to move President Trump's agenda forward. Will we be able to get control of spending? We'll discuss it all with Congressman Andy Biggs next on the Vince Coglianese Show.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, it seemed like it was going to happen, and then it didn't seem like it was going to happen, and then it finally happened. Last night, the United States House Republicans advanced a budget resolution, 217 to 215. It squeaked through. That clears the first step to delivering that big, beautiful bill that President Trump would like in his first-year legislative agenda. Here to discuss what exactly happened last night is Congressman Andy Biggs. He represents Arizona's 5th Congressional District, and he cares about how the government spends your money, so he's the perfect guy to talk to. Congressman, good to have you back with us.
Thanks, Vince. Good to be with you.
The back and forth last night, it came down to the wire, but Speaker Johnson able to get this thing across the finish line. What are the divisions, if any, among Republicans right now?
Sorry. Yeah, so what you've got going is you've got a bunch of spending hawks, and we want more cuts, right? Because you got a massive deficit and a massive debt. And then you have some folks that don't want to touch various aspects of the government for reducing. Some of them are their own personal pet kind of programs. Some of them deal directly with subsidies, for instance, to maybe something in their district or not. And some just don't want to do any cuts. That's the dynamic that you have there. And then what overarching all that, Vince, which makes it really colorful and interesting, is you really have a one-vote margin.
Uh-huh.
So that's what. So last night, what was going on? We could lose because there was one Democrat not on the floor. We could lose. You could get one no and one present.
Uh-huh.
That's all you could have. So that gives you the dynamics both process-wise and policy-wise.
So in the coverage I've seen of this, they say it's a budget resolution which recommends sort of broad cuts to a variety of committees in the House, and that they're going to have to work out the details later. This resolution, now that the House has passed one, does that mean that the House and Senate begin working on what specifically they're going to spend money on?
That's correct. So this is a reconciliation. In order to reconcile, it's with instructions. So every committee has instructions. Some committees have only the ability to cut, and because they have more jurisdiction. For instance, ENC has told you have to cut $888 billion out over the next 10 years. And then you have others like Judiciary that I sit on, where they say you're going to have to fund like $110 billion to help pay for the border security programs. But then we're expected to find, I think it's like $35 billion because we don't have as much jurisdiction to reduce funding. So every committee that has a jurisdiction of any kind is going to get You have to do spending cuts, and some of us have to find a way to plus up so you can fund certain programs that we're expanding on, like border security.
You mentioned, I think you used an acronym to refer to it, the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And that's okay. And you mentioned that they need to achieve $880 billion in savings over a 10-year period. That need to make cuts to that effect. That's how Congress works with these reconciliation bills. It's over 10 years. And I've noticed that the left has used that detail as a basis to say that Republicans are cutting Medicaid. This is the way they talk about it. And the reason, as I understand it, is because that committee does deal predominantly. They have jurisdiction over Medicaid, and that might be the place where you have to find savings. It's such a big program. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, doesn't Medicare and Medicaid have over $100 billion in detectable fraud every year? If you were to get control of just the fraud, that's $1 trillion in savings.
Yeah. In fact, Vince, we've been told it's actually even higher than that. So there's massive amounts of fraud that go on there, and just a normal reduction of fraud you might not be able to get it down to zero, but to get it down, let's say, by 75%, well, now you've taken care of $750 billion of your problem.
Yeah.
And then they have a whole bunch of other programs. Energy and Commerce has probably the widest jurisdiction in the United States Congress, so there's a lot of programs that they have. Don't forget, there's a lot of waste going on throughout this government that they can get at as well. So yeah. But your finer point, and I agree with this, is the left is trying to craft a narrative to scare the bejeebies out of Americans. But we know what should scare the bejeebies? Even with the cuts that are proposed in the House version, which is a lot more than the Senate version, you still will have a structural deficit of a roughly $2 trillion a year, and you're still approaching $60 trillion plus of national debt hanging over your head in 10 years.
Yeah, it's a horrific debt problem. Can you tell us about President Trump's priorities? What's involved here in terms of what he's been able to get through so far, at least in this resolution? I know one of his priorities is no tax on tips. He doesn't want taxes on Social Security checks, which, by the way, makes a lot of sense to me. How many times can you tax the same exact money over and over and over until you have none of it? What does the president get here out of this whole thing?
Well, so he's getting the things that he wanted. There's no debt. There won't be a debt ceiling, which it took me a long time to get there. But Congress acts like there's no debt ceiling anyway, Vince. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right.
So that's one. So he gets this whole tax package in place, and it looks like he wants it permanent. I don't know if it gets there permanently, but it's a really, really extended time period before you revisit it. When I say extended, I think maybe the entire 10 years is the way that they ended up structuring that. But again, that's up to the Ways and Means Committee.
You're talking about the Trump tax cuts.
Yeah, the tax cuts plus the additional tax programs that he wants.
Got it.
And then you're also getting the money that $175 billion, I think, is where that came in for the border security, and that's for 10 years, and that should take care of all of it. But we need to get that money going like right now because they're running out of money over there, which is preventing all these deportations because they're running out of resources. And then the other thing that he doesn't really want, but you have to admit that you're buying this off, is there's some more money going into the Pentagon. Now, does that stay there after you get the Senate and the House reconciling this together? I don't know, but they want about $100 billion or $150 billion to the military, which has never passed an audit, never passed a clean audit, Vince. So
yeah, and they want to do that. Secretary Hegseth saying that he wants to get that achieved, get an actual audit passed, and weren't they looking to cut 8% of the Pentagon's budget? Wasn't that the number? They want to try and pare this thing down a little bit. And there's definitely money to save.
There's definitely money to save. And what Secretary Hegseth has said he wants to do is 8% per year. And that's a compounding. So like, let's say it's $1 trillion because it's almost $1 trillion now. You take 8% off, so the next year you're at 920. So you're going to take 8% off the 920. The next year you're moving down, and so you're now about 860, or something like that, and you just keep taking it down, and so at the end of the period, you're going to have like a $580 to $620 billion budget, and it'll be very efficient and lean, we hope.
Yeah. So what do you make of President Trump's efforts to stimulate the tax revenue and the economy, obviously, and to cut taxes and to try and get control of this debt? He's definitely not given up on this issue. I mean, he cares about it, even proposing this week this idea of giving out $5 million gold cards to people who want to immigrate to the United States and give us a lot of money to help pay down our debt. What do you make of the president's efforts right now, Congressman?
Well, he came out very clearly this week in this cabinet meeting and said that he wants a balanced budget as soon as possible. So it means he recognizes that the national debt is a security threat, which is, by the way, legislation that I run every year. It is a national security threat. But beyond that, it tells me that he's willing to go in and make some hard decisions, because we're going to have to make some hard decisions. I mean, when you tell an agency you no longer exist, that's a hard decision, and it makes me hopeful. But I think he understands that we're at an existential point, an existential crossroads, and he's trying to deal with it. And I've told him myself, I said, you will be, for sure, he's already going to be a historical president. But you get us and lay the foundation on us economically that'll last a couple of generations, then you will have your face somewhere near Mount Rushmore. Or you're going to have a new you're not going to be Trump Tower, but you're going to have a Trump monument somewhere. Yes. Because the reality is he's changing the culture, the economy, and taking us back to smaller government, and that's he's invigorating federalism for Pete's sakes, and that turns us back to what we're supposed to be, a republic, a constitutional republic, not a national government.
I've seen some people who are concerned about government spending poo-pooing the Doge, that they're just nitpicking, they're picking small stuff, they're not cutting enough. Why are we even concerned about this? It's really about entitlement spending. I'm kind of encouraged, actually, by Doge. I think it's a useful audit of the way the government's been spending money, a lot of it out of our sight completely. What do you think of this Elon Musk-run operation?
Well, I'm all for it. I think people need to remember that even he's fishing in a smaller pond, that's for sure. It's about 25 to 30% of the overall federal government spending. But what, should we just ignore that? No. I mean, this is where a lot of corruption goes. I mean, you and I were just talking about the fraud and waste in, say, the Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. Yeah. Believe me, there's a ton of fraud and waste going on there, and to the extent that he has found literally trillions of dollars of unauthorized spending over the last 10, 15 years. That's right. And Congress goes through that every year, but we've never been able to get all of that data because the bureaucracy stonewalls us. They don't want to give us that information. So we know it. We can estimate it. The IGs, the inspectors generals, can do the same. The government accounting office can do the same thing. But he's getting in there. They're going in actually tracing the numbers, and that's how you find this stuff.
Lastly, Congressman Andy Biggs, you and I have talked quite a bit over the years about Republican leadership, specifically in the House. I've noticed that both the House and the Senate, they do seem to be moving. There does seem to be forward progress on Trump's agenda. In the Senate, in particular, John Thune is shepherding the Republicans there to get all these nominees passed at a pretty good pace, actually, relative to historical norms. How are you scoring Speaker Johnson's role right now as the leader in the House?
Well, I think we should have been doing this. What we're doing now, we should have done a month ago. But he is moving it forward. I'm glad he's moving it forward. But we just need to get pedal to the metal. Right now is a particularly precarious time, Vince, and that is where we have our bill out. The Senate has passed a bill out, and now we have to see what the Senate's going to do with our bill. Are they going to accept it and fiddle around with it and go to a conference committee or what? It's a precarious time, and this is going to be these guys, both Thune and Johnson, they really need to get this together so that next week we're actually making more progress on it. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Don't take your foot off the gas pedal now. Now's the time to put the hammer down and really, really rocket the car.
Another lesson that the president's proving from the White House every day. Hey, thank you very much, Congressman Andy Biggs. Always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for that insight.
You bet. Thanks, Vince.
Nice to talk today on this effort to get control of government spending and what the president's going to touch, what he's going to cut. A reporter today raising the left-wing conspiracy theory that he's going to hurt all these people on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Here's President Trump responding to that claim.
The president's spending bill that passed last night aims to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that, like people that shouldn't be on, people that are illegal aliens and others, and criminals stealing. In many cases.
There's people that steal Medicare. I played audio yesterday from CNBC. There are people who have made millions upon millions of dollars very quickly by just straight up stealing money from Medicare, robbing you blind. And the only limiting factor in terms of catching it all is we don't have enough enforcement people to catch it all. And the CNBC reported back in 2023, I believe it was every $1 of enforcement money that we're spending has resulted in $11 in returns. Well, hello. How easy is the math? Put enforcement people out there and catch all these fraudsters.
And that's with Social Security. We have a lot of people. You see that immediately when you see people that are 200 years old that are being sent checks for Social Security. Some of them are actually being sent checks. So we're tracing that down, and I have a feeling that Pam is going to do a very good job with that. Yeah. But you have a lot of fraud. But no, we're not doing anything on this.
Okay, there's the president today. You know, a big press conference / cabinet meeting. 5:51 now.
WMAL, making sense of social media because big tech can't be trusted. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin, Cosmo Kramer, you know him? He was, this week, he was defending the Biden administration terrorizing parents at school board meetings. Listen to this.
I hear about the prosecution and vilification of parents, of mothers and fathers.
Yes.
And hey, I'm a father. My kids went to public school. That doesn't sound very good to me. So I try to get to the bottom of this because I've been hearing about it for 5 years now.
Well, you should have been listening to WMAL.
And I asked myself, what are they talking about? So I get the memo, which was from Attorney General Merrick Garland.
As pushed along by the White House and the National School Board Association.
And it begins, I don't have time to read the whole thing. There's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, teachers, board members, and staff.
That was contrived.
The word mother or father don't appear. The word parent doesn't appear here.
That's because the left doesn't use those words anymore.
There's all of this propaganda about some prosecution of parents is based on absolutely nothing.
Well, it's based on reality, actually. So once again, Jamie Raskin, Cosmo Kramer lying to you. We have whistleblowers from the FBI saying they were parked in the parking lots outside of the school board meetings, writing down license plate numbers. Jamie Raskin, I did my research. I didn't see anything. Well, then I don't trust you to do research on anything. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on the legendary WMAL.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.